Good morning, Little Masters, and welcome back to today's Tolkien Times. I'm the Man of the West, also from the Prancing Pony podcast. Let's keep week 41 going with today's Third Age Thursday as we get cozy in that most hobbity of chapters, A Long Expected Party. Now, last week we listened as Bilbo's speech continued, much to the chagrin of some of his guests, and then abruptly ended with his sudden disappearance. Today we'll listen in as he and Gandalf chat about his future. As for Bilbo Baggins, even while he was making his speech, he had been fingering the golden ring in his pocket, his magic ring that he had kept secret for so many years. As he stepped down, he slipped it on his finger, and he was never seen by any hobbit in Hobbiton again. He walked briskly back to his hole and stood for a moment listening with a smile to the din in the pavilion and to the sounds of merrymaking in other parts of the field. Then he went in. He took off his party clothes, folded up and wrapped in tissue paper his embroidered silk waistcoat, and put it away. Then he put on quickly some old untidy garments and fastened round his waist a worn leather belt. On it he hung a short sword in a battered black leather scabbard. From a locked drawer, smelling of mothballs, he took out an old cloak and hood. They had been locked up as if they were very precious, but they were so patched and weather-stained that their original color could hardly be guessed. It might have been dark green. They were rather too large for him. He then went into his study, and from a large strong-box took out a bundle wrapped in old cloths, and a leather-bound manuscript, and also a large, bulky envelope. The book and bundle he stuffed into the top of a heavy bag that was standing there already nearly full. Into the envelope he slipped his golden ring and its fine chain, and then sealed it and addressed it to Frodo. At first he put it on the mantelpiece, but suddenly he removed it and stuck it in his pocket. At that moment the door opened, and Gandalf came quickly in. "Hello," said Bilbo. "I wondered if you would turn up." "I'm glad to find you visible," replied the wizard, sitting down in a chair. "I wanted to catch you and have a few final words. I suppose you feel that everything has gone off splendidly and according to plan?" "Yes, I do," said Bilbo. "Though that flash was surprising, it quite startled me, let alone the others. A little addition of your own, I suppose?" "It was. You have wisely kept that ring secret all these years, and it seemed to me necessary to give your guests something else that would seem to explain your sudden vanishment." "That would spoil my joke. You're an interfering old busybody," laughed Bilbo. "But I expect you know best, as usual." "I do, when I know anything, but I don't feel too sure about this whole affair. It has now come to the final point. You've had your joke, and alarmed or offended most of your relations, and given the whole Shire something to talk about for 9 days, or 99 more likely. Are you going any further?" "Yes, I am. I feel I need a holiday. A very long holiday, as I've told you before. Probably a permanent holiday. I don't expect I shall return. In fact, I don't mean to, and I have made all arrangements. I am old, Gandalf. I don't look it, but I am beginning to feel it in my heart of hearts. Well preserved indeed," he snorted. "Why, I feel all thin, sort of stretched, if you know what I mean, like butter that has been scraped over too much bread. That can't be right. I need a change or something." Gandalf looked curiously and closely at him. "No, it does not seem right," he said thoughtfully. "No, after all, I believe your plan is probably the best." "Well, I've made up my mind anyway. I want to see mountains again, Gandalf. Mountains. And then find somewhere where I can rest. In peace and quiet, without a lot of relatives prying around and a string of confounded visitors hanging on the bell. I might find somewhere where I can finish my book. I have thought of a nice ending for it. And he lived happily ever after to the end of his days." Gandalf laughed. "I hope he will, but nobody will read the book, however it ends." I love that. I love the callbacks to The Hobbit that are in this passage. The old cloak and hood that might have been dark green. I want to take us back to roast mutton in The Hobbit for this. Bilbo's just caught up with the departing dwarves, and he's lamenting his lack of a handkerchief and a hat. Dwalin says to him, "You will have to manage without pocket handkerchiefs, and a good many other things before you get to the journey's end. As for a hat, I've got a spare hood and cloak in my luggage." That's how they all came to start. jogging off from the inn one fine morning just before May on laden ponies. And Bilbo was wearing a dark green hood, a little weather-stained, and a dark green cloak borrowed from Dwalin. They were too large for him, and he looked rather comic. What his father Bungo would have thought of him, I daren't think. His only comfort was he couldn't be mistaken for a dwarf, as he had no beard. Personally, I'm not so sure that's any comfort at all. But this moment from 60 years ago is clearly playing through Bilbo's mind right now, and it is lovely. And we also have the bundle, which I imagine is the mithril coat, as well as the leather-bound manuscript, which must be the memoirs he was said to have been writing at the end of The Hobbit. But we also get some foreboding hints, powerful reminders of the ring at work here. Bilbo feeling stretched. Not to mention Bilbo putting the envelope containing the ring into his pocket instead of on the mantelpiece as he originally intended. But still, I think my favorite part of the passage here, and it's just a little tiny thing, it's the reason why I ended it here instead of somewhere else, is that sort of meta comment at the end from Gandalf. This feels like Tolkien speaking through Gandalf about the potential audience for The Lord of the Rings. Nobody is going to read this book however it ends. Thankfully, that's proven not to be true at all. Now, folks, thank you for joining me for this week's Third Age Thursday. I think we might need to continue this chapter when Series 6 starts up again the week of May 20th, but we'll see. We will certainly continue it at some point, I promise you that, even if we take a series away from it. Check out patreon.com/Tolkien Times to learn how you can support the show, get an ad-free feed, join my content council, get a bonus weekly episode, and more. And join me again tomorrow on today's Tolkien Times for my continued attempts at reading poetry. If you're watching this on YouTube, please like and subscribe. Follow or subscribe in your podcast apps, and please, everybody, follow @Tolkien Times on your social media. Finally, as Faramir says, go with the goodwill of all good men.